My wife and her affair partner, a wealthy real estate agent, stole $200, $0 from our joint account during our divorce. Then we discovered he was also taking ownership of my family home, which he claims I gifted him in a hidden contract. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where everything I believed about my marriage would come crashing down in a matter of days. But here I am, trying to piece it all together after discovering that my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with some rich real estate guy named Brandon. And to make it worse, they had stolen over $200, $0 from our joint account during our divorce. It's a story filled with betrayal, lies, and a revenge plan I didn't see coming. And honestly, I still can't believe how everything unraveled so fast. It started about 6 months ago. Lisa and I had been together for nearly 10 years. We had our ups and downs, but for the most part, I thought we were solid. She was always a bit bitchy and manipulative, but I chalked it up to her being stressed or just her personality. She had a way of lying about small things like denying she was at her friend Jenny's house when I knew damn well she was out with some guy from her work. Nothing major, I figured. But then, I noticed the little things that didn't add up anymore. It was around the time I started noticing strange charges on our bank statements, things I didn't recognize. Small amounts here and there, but then I saw a huge withdrawal, $50, $0 from our joint account. I thought maybe she was paying off some bills or a loan, but she brushed it off like I was overreacting. She told me it was just some investment she was making, that she needed a little freedom to handle her own money. She said I was being paranoid, that I didn't trust her. That should have been my first red flag, but I was still trying to believe her. Then came the days when she started acting even more distant. She'd leave the house early, come back late, and always had some excuse about work or meeting friends. But I'd notice her phone constantly buzzing, and she'd hide it quick when I walked in the room. I looked at her phone one night when she was in the shower just out of curiosity, and I saw a series of texts from Brandon, a guy I'd never heard of before. They were flirty, suggestive, and clearly more than just friends. I got chills reading them. She was telling him she was so tired of her marriage, and he was promising to make her feel alive again. That was my first real clue that something was seriously wrong. I confronted her that night. She lied, of course. Said Brandon was just a client, that I was imagining things, that I was paranoid and jealous. She called me crazy, told me I was overreacting and that I needed to trust her. But I didn't trust her anymore. Not after reading those texts. I started digging deeper, trying to find more evidence, but she was good at covering her tracks. The thing is, Lisa is a master manipulator. She's bitchy, sarcastic, and can lie with a straight face for hours. She always had a way of turning things around to make me feel like I was the problem. When I confronted her about the money, she said I was being paranoid again, that she was just making some investments for us, that it was all in my head. But I knew better now. Something was seriously wrong, and I was starting to feel like I was losing my mind trying to keep up with her lies. Then, last week, I stumbled across a folder on her laptop, hidden in a cloud drive she never mentioned. It was full of documents, receipts, and contracts, and what I saw made my stomach drop. There, in black and white, was proof that Brandon wasn't just some side guy. He was claiming ownership of our family home, saying I gifted it to him in some secret contract. I couldn't believe it. Our house, the place I poured my soul into, that I thought was my safe haven, was being claimed by some guy I'd never even heard of until recently. The worst part, Lisa had been lying to me about everything. She'd been planning this probably for months. The money stolen from our joint account was used to buy Brandon's silence, to pay for his legal fees, or maybe just to keep him happy. I don't know how long this affair had been going on, but it's clear that Lisa's idea of love was just about money, power, and screwing over me. I feel like I've been hit by a freight train. My world is falling apart and I'm left trying to figure out what to do next. I thought I knew my wife, but she's nothing like I believed. I'm furious, hurt, and incredibly betrayed. I never thought I'd get to this point, but I'm starting to realize that revenge might be the only way I can get some semblance of justice. I'm not the kind of guy who takes betrayal lightly, And now, I'm planning to make sure she pays for what she's done. As I sat there staring at the screens, feeling my blood run cold, everything I thought I knew about Lisa and our life together started to feel like a lie. The documents in front of me weren't just proof of her affair. They were a blueprint of her betrayal on every level. Brandon claiming ownership of the house, the money gone, and her lies. She had lied about everything, about her feelings, her intentions, even about her own integrity. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept circling back to that house, the memories we made there, the plans we had for the future. And now I realized it was all a sham. She'd been cheating, stealing, and probably laughing behind my back the entire time. I felt like a fool, but also a man scorned. And that's when the anger started to brew, cold, precise, and deadly. I didn't want to just walk away from this. I wanted her to feel what I was feeling, humiliated, betrayed, and powerless. The next morning, I decided I had to confront her. I called her at work, told her I needed to talk. When she showed up that evening, she was her usual bitchy self, rolling her eyes and throwing her hair over her shoulder like she didn't have a care in the world. I didn't hold back. I laid out everything I'd found, the texts, the documents, the missing money. Her face went pale for a second, then she scoffed. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You're overreacting. You're just jealous because Brandon is successful and I'm tired of your little jealous streak. Honestly, you're lucky I stayed with you this long. You're not that great, you know." That was the moment I realized how much she hated me. She'd always had this bitchy edge, but now it was worse. She was trying to spin it to make me the crazy one, but I wasn't buying it. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You've been lying to me for months. I know about Brandon, about the money, about the house. And I want to know what the hell is going on." She crossed her arms, sneered, and said, "Look, I was bored, okay? Brandon makes me feel alive. You're dull, you're predictable, and I needed something more. I never loved you the way I loved him. It's not my fault if you're too stupid to see what's happening." I felt my fists clench. Her words cut deep, but I kept my voice steady. "You stole from us, the money, the house, it's all ours, and you've been planning this for a while, haven't you?" She rolled her eyes again. "You're really pathetic. I didn't steal anything. Brandon and I had an arrangement. And as for the house, maybe I gifted it to him. Who cares? It's just stuff. You're the one who's so obsessed with money, with owning things." I just wanted to be happy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was lying, gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own sanity. But I knew better. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I was done, that I was going to get a lawyer, and that she'd regret this betrayal. After she left, I sat there, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. I couldn't understand how she could be so callous, so manipulative. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for Brandon and a stupid idea of excitement. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. But what hurt most was realizing that this wasn't just about money or the house. It was about her total disregard for me, for what we had built, for the vows we took. She'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. The betrayal was so deep that I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just sit back and watch her walk away with my life, my house, and thousands of dollars I'd worked hard for. That night I started planning my revenge. I wasn't just going to let her get away with stealing from me and screwing around behind my back. No, I needed her to feel the same pain, the same humiliation. I needed her to understand that her actions had consequences. I realized that I couldn't trust her anymore, not as a wife, not as a human being. And I was going to make sure she paid for her lies. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to a lawyer, someone who knew about property disputes and financial crimes. I started gathering all the evidence I had, screenshots, bank statements, contracts. I was going to expose her, and I was going to take back what was mine. The house, the money, my dignity. Whatever it took, I was ready. Because if she thought she could just lie, cheat, and walk away with my life, she was dead wrong. The more I dug into the legal side of things, the clearer it became that Lisa had been planning her escape for months. The documents she hid weren't just some impulsive scheme, they were carefully crafted. Brandon claiming ownership of the house, the forged contract, everything looked legit on paper, but I knew better. I had a good lawyer now, someone sharp and experienced. We started building a case to prove the house was still legally mine, that Lisa had no right to transfer ownership without my consent, especially since I'd never signed any contract giving it away. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She was pretending to be the innocent victim, crying to her friends that I was controlling and jealous. She told everyone I was losing it, that I'd become an overbearing husband who couldn't handle her success. I heard from a few people she'd even told some of her friends that I was crazy and possessive, trying to paint herself as the victim. It made my stomach turn. She was lying, spinning stories, and I was left feeling like I was the villain in my own life. One day, I decided I had to confront her again, this time with the lawyer present. I set up a meeting at her office, knowing she'd be caught off guard. When she arrived, she looked annoyed, like I was wasting her precious time. I didn't hold back. I told her that I knew about the fake contract, that her plans to steal the house and the money were over. I laid out all the evidence I had, and I made it clear that I was going to fight her for everything she tried to take. Her face flickered with anger and panic. She tried to deny it all, claiming I was making it up, that I was paranoid. But I had everything documented. I told her I wasn't going to let her get away with this, that I was going to take her to court and expose her lies. That's when she snapped. "You think you can just ruin me? You're a nobody, a boring little man who's been too blind to see what I was doing," she spat. "You're just jealous Brandon is better than you. You're pathetic. If you try to fight me, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll ruin you financially, emotionally, everything." That was the moment I realized she was dangerous. She wasn't just a cheating wife. She was willing to destroy me if she had to. But I also knew I had the upper hand now. I had the evidence, the lawyer, and a plan. I wasn't going to back down. I told her she'd be hearing from my lawyer soon, and I left her office feeling a strange mixture of relief and fury. I knew this was only the beginning of a long fight, but I was done playing nice. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing. I thought about the house, the money, her lies, Brandon's smug face. I realized that I had been a fool to trust her for so long. She lied about everything, about her feelings, her loyalty, even her love. All for money, power, and Brandon's stupid idea of excitement. I felt like I'd been played for a sucker, and now I was paying the price. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her ruin me. I was going to fight back. I'd spent years building a life with her, but now I saw her true colors. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, and I was done being the victim. It was time to take control, to show her she couldn't just walk over me and steal everything I valued. In that moment, I made a decision. I would fight her in court, expose her lies, and reclaim what was mine: the house, the money, my dignity. I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal, every lie, every stolen dollar, every moment she made me feel small. I didn't know exactly how I'd do it yet, but I knew I wouldn't stop until she faced the consequences. And honestly, I was ready for whatever came next. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I had everything lined up. My lawyer filed the necessary documents to contest Brandon's claim of ownership, and I made it clear I was prepared to take this all the way to court if needed. The more I dug into the paperwork, the more I realized just how deep Lisa's deception went. She'd forged signatures, manipulated legal language, and tried to make it look like the house was hers by some gift she claimed I gave her in a secret contract. The thing is, I never signed any such thing. It was all a lie, and I had proof. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude shifted. She started to realize that I wasn't backing down. She'd been confident, even smug, thinking she could pull this off and walk away with everything. But now the cracks appeared. She became more defensive, more frantic. I caught her trying to destroy some of her phone evidence, deleting texts, pictures, emails. She thought she was smart, like she could erase her tracks, but I had already downloaded everything and I had a backup. There was no way she was going to erase the truth. One evening, I decided to confront her directly, face to face, about her plans. I called her and told her I knew she'd been trying to cover her tracks. She came over trying to act innocent, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew about Brandon's ownership claim, about the forged contract, and that I was prepared to go to court and expose everything. Her face twisted into a sneer. "Really? You think you can just ruin me? You're a joke," she spat. "You're nothing. Brandon's the real winner here, not you. You're just a loser who's too stupid to see his wife is bored and wants a little excitement. Well, I don't care what you do. I'll just find someone else and Brandon will take care of everything. That's when I snapped. I told her she'd crossed the line that I'd had enough of. Her lies and manipulation. I said I was going to make sure she paid for every dollar she stole, for every lie she told, and for trying to steal my house. I told her I was done being the victim, that I was going to fight her in court and make her regret ever messing with me. She tried to play the victim again, crying and saying I was trying to ruin her life. But I was past caring about her tears. I knew she was bluffing. She had nowhere to run now. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the resolve. I told her that if she kept trying to manipulate the situation, I'd go public with everything, expose her lies, her affair, her theft. I was ready for a fight and I was determined to win. That night I stayed up late, going through every piece of evidence I had. I reached out to some private investigators I knew just to make sure I had all angles covered. I wanted to catch her in any slip-up, to have everything ready when we went to court. I felt a strange mix of adrenaline and dread, knowing this was going to be a long, ugly battle. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it, not this time. The next day I prepared myself for the worst. I knew Lisa wasn't going to give up easily. She had too much to lose, and I could tell she was starting to realize that her carefully crafted scheme was falling apart. I wasn't just fighting for my house or the money. I was fighting for my dignity, for the truth. I looked at the legal papers, the evidence I'd collected, and I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making her face the consequences of her lies. I was ready to take this to court. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive fool she could manipulate anymore. I was a man who was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine, and I knew she was starting to realize just how serious I was. That's when I truly understood. This wasn't just a fight over money or property. It was a battle for my life, my sanity, and my future. And I wasn't going to lose. The court date finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Lisa looked nervous, but she still had that bitchy smirk, like she thought she could bluff her way through it. Brandon wasn't there physically, but his name was everywhere. His supposed ownership, the forged contract, the money she stole. I had everything laid out in front of the judge, every piece of evidence, every lie she'd told. I was ready to fight for what was mine, and I knew she was starting to realize she was in deep trouble. The courtroom was tense from the start. Lisa's lawyer tried to dismiss the forged contract, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that Lisa had gifted the house out of generosity. But I had signed documents, bank statements, and witnesses ready to testify that I never signed anything giving away my property. My lawyer argued that the entire deal was fraudulent, a scheme cooked up by Lisa and Brandon to steal my house and my money. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, flipping through the evidence, and it was clear from the look on her face that she saw through Lisa's lies. Lisa's face was a mix of anger and desperation. She tried to deny everything, claiming she'd been misled, that she thought the contract was legitimate. But her voice cracked when I presented the digital copies of her deleted texts with Brandon, proof that she'd been planning this from the start. I felt a surge of satisfaction seeing her squirm. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. As the hearing went on, I saw the tide turning. The judge was clearly annoyed with Lisa's evasiveness and her attempts to manipulate the court. My lawyer pointed out the inconsistencies, the forged signatures, the missing funds, and how Lisa had systematically lied to everyone, including me, for months. The judge finally asked Lisa directly if she knew she was committing fraud, and she hesitated before admitting she'd overstated some things, but insisted she still believed she had a right to the house. That was the moment I knew I'd won a significant victory. The judge looked at all the evidence, then made her ruling. She declared that the contract was a forgery, that I was the rightful owner of the house, and ordered Brandon's claim to be invalid. She also ordered Lisa to repay the stolen $200, $0 plus interest, and warned her that any further attempts to manipulate the court could result in criminal charges. When the judge's gavel struck, I felt a wave of relief. It was like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I looked over at Lisa, and for the first time in months I saw her real face, defeated, angry, and furious. She knew she'd lost. Brandon's name was officially wiped from any claim to the house, and I was finally getting back what was rightfully mine. But the victory didn't come without a cost. Lisa's bitterness boiled over after the ruling. She started lashing out, calling me every name in the book, saying I'd ruined her life. She threatened to appeal, to fight me every step of the way. I knew she wouldn't go quietly. She was going to try to drag this out to make me pay for exposing her lies. In the aftermath, I felt a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. I'd fought hard and I'd won, at least on paper. But I also knew that the emotional scars wouldn't heal overnight. I was angry, betrayed, and hurt, but I also felt a strange sense of pride. I'd stood up for myself, refused to be a victim, and fought for what was rightfully mine. It was a long, brutal battle, but I'd come out on top. Looking back, I realize how much this experience changed me. I learned that people can hide their true nature behind a pretty face and manipulative words. I learned that trust is fragile, and that sometimes you have to fight for your dignity. Most of all, I learned that revenge isn't about just hurting someone. It's about reclaiming your power and making them understand that their actions have consequences. I don't wish this kind of betrayal on anyone, but if you find yourself in a similar situation, don't back down. Fight for yourself. Because in the end, no one else will do it for you. After the court's decision, everything started to settle into a new, strange normal. Lisa was furious, but there was little she could do now. The judge's ruling was clear, and the evidence had spoken for itself. I finally regained control of my house. The money she stole was ordered to be paid back, and Brandon's claims were invalidated. But the emotional toll lingered. I felt like I'd been through a war, not just legally but personally. Trust was shattered, and I knew I'd need time to heal from this betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of the house. I rented a small apartment nearby, just enough space for me to breathe without the constant reminder of her lies. I couldn't stay in that house, not after what she'd done. Every corner, every room held memories of a life I thought was real, but was just a carefully crafted lie. Leaving it behind was painful, but I knew it was the right decision. I needed to start over, rebuild my sense of security, and get away from her toxic influence. Lisa tried to reach out a few times, claiming she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that she wanted to work things out. But I wasn't interested. I saw her for what she was: selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own gain. I told her to stay away. I had no interest in her apologies. I just wanted to move forward and forget the nightmare she dragged me into. The financial aftermath was another story. I filed for a divorce, which was messy but straightforward in light of everything. The judge ordered her to pay back the stolen money, and I finally saw the end of that chapter. I started focusing on rebuilding my life, saving money, working on my career, and trying to forget the pain of betrayal. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to come out of this stronger. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this ordeal. I learned to trust my instincts, to pay attention to the small signs that something was wrong. I learned that people, especially those closest to you, can hide their true nature behind a pretty face and convincing lies. And I learned that sometimes you have to fight hard for what's right, even when it feels almost impossible. Most importantly, I found a new sense of self-respect. I no longer saw myself as a victim of her lies. I saw myself as someone who stood up, fought back, and refused to let her destroy what I worked so hard to build. Revenge wasn't about hurting her for the sake of hurting, though that felt good at the time. It was about reclaiming my dignity and making her face the consequences of her actions. Now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I've learned to be cautious, to trust again slowly, and to value honesty above everything. The scars will fade, but the lessons will stay with me forever. Betrayal is a bitter pill, but it's also a wake-up call. It's shown me what I'm truly capable of when pushed to the edge. And from now on, I know that no matter how dark things get, I have the strength to fight for myself. And that's what really matters.